Dreams, our new cover story on Dreams. What a weird one. So we launched it on Tuesday. Has the reaction of the cover story surprised you guys at all?
Yeah, I thought it was more vocal than I thought it would be. It's definitely a niche sort of thing, it feels like to me. Like, I walked away from that cover story going, okay, this is a game that is going to be for not a general audience. No matter how much they want it to be and whatever, accommodations they're making for that, I don't think that's going to happen. But, it's still the reaction from that audience. Like, it was the audience that I thought we'd get, sort of the numbers and stuff, but like they're really into it in a way that I wasn't expecting.
Yeah, I agree. They are more vocal than I expected. And I think our timing ended up being really good too, because I think people just started to forget about Dreams a little bit.
Turns out it's been a long time that we've all been thinking about it. It's in the back of everybody's mind.
It's been years now since it was revealed for the first time.
Yeah.
And I think, from that point forward, we haven't seen it in the spotlight very much at all.
Right.
So I think our timing was great because people do have enthusiasm for this game, and then it kind of rekindles that.
Okay, so I feel like we should just set the table a little bit. Dreams, PlayStation 4 exclusive from the creators of Little Big Planet. It's basically, you can make the analogy, I guess, of like the harmonics jump from Guitar Hero to Rock Band, going from Little Big Planet to Dreams, except now you're scaling the mountain, and you're not, playing with a rock band, you're putting on a full concert and also creating the stage
orchestra.
And doing absolutely everything. It is an insane system of tools that also contains a short story mode in there.
Yeah, it's up there with like the most ambitious pitches I've ever heard. So when we went there, I was pretty skeptical. I was open to the idea. Like, I had played with Little Big Planet, and I was like, okay, this is a cool level creator with some limitations.
Yeah.
And I kept those limitations in mind when, they gave us the pitch, because they had sort of like presented a vague version of this pitch, but they really went in on it during the trip, being like, no, you can make pretty much whatever you want. The only notable exception that they said was right out, there were two, MMOs because of player count, and also FMV games in the current version.
Right.
So with those things in mind, like, it still seems pretty ludicrous to me that you can make, any other genre in that, including like, because we listed it off to them, right? We said RTSs.
Yeah.
We said first-person shooters, role-playing games, obviously
RPGs.
local multiplayer, which they showed us.
Online multiplayer is coming later, so that's a small limitation at this point.
Yeah.
But that was also the big takeaway. After spending 2 days at the studio, it's like, you just need to stop thinking of this as a game creation tool like Little Big Planet was, where it's like, can you make this? Can you make this? Like, they got to the point where it's like, you just realize it's just a game engine. Like, you would never ask, can Unity do this? Can Unreal do this?
Right. I think like one of the, quotes from the team that I really remember is like, well, it's not about, what you can or can't do. It's more about like how you do it.
Yeah.
How much of a pain in the ass it's going to be.
Right. It's not about the limitations, but it's more about exactly how much are you willing to put into it.
Yeah, I think
to make what you want to make.
Yeah, I think the most impressive thing I walked away from is directly related to that, because the big problem when you're developing a game isn't just like, okay, what do I develop this in, blah, 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 or how do I develop this? It's how do I get the talent to help me fix in the areas that I can't do? So, like, oh, if I'm great at design, how do I get a modeler? And so that they have the social network set up in there that sort of mimics Twitter and Twitch and YouTube to help you sort of find people who would be interested in your project to work with. That's a huge thing. It's not just a matter of the tool sets that they have in there, like, oh, you can like model things, or you can, put triggers down, which we'll talk about later.
Yeah.
But finding the necessary talent to help you out is a huge thing.
And the way that works,
Yes.
it's called a persona.
Yeah.
So you have your persona, and it's basically like a meter, a series of meters. So it's stuff like play, design, art, animation, audio, curation, and also has like current passion versus lifetime passion in theory. So it'll show like what you're especially interested in. And then you can find like, I want to find the most upvoted, highest rated artist or just composer, and then say, hey, send them a message within Dreams or on the PlayStation systems, be like, hey, can you help out with a game, please?
I think that's fantastic. It's like a social media platform for collaborators and, video game creators. That's cool. That's great.
Super cool.
Which isn't, that's not the first of its kind, because obviously there's been like deviant art and stuff, but to have that built into the game itself, or, the game engine, whatever we're calling it, built into Dreams is a big deal.
Yeah.
Like, there's an
Everything is-
immediacy there.
That's right, because everything is there. For sure.
Okay, so if you went in skeptical, how did you leave, both of you?
I left pretty excited. I still have, some issues and concerns that they didn't alleviate. In fact, the answers to the questions that they gave me sort of made them even bigger, but we can talk about those later. But mostly I'm very positive, and I'm very curious to see like
Oh,
what
God.
emerges from dreams.
Yeah.
But you know, I'm pretty much like a believer in that game now, and that like if you have the amount of people that you need, you know, if you're capable of finding the talent to help you out, like the tools that are there can make you pretty much make anything. I feel
Yeah,
like that comes
I-
to mind. Like I believe that.
Yeah.
I think I came out excited. I came out excited too, but I still feel like that is a very difficult game to market
Yep.
and to, you know, tell your audience exactly what this is.
It's just
so
a game
difficult.
engine, everybody. Just
Yeah.
think of it as a game. It is secretly Sony's
But
backdoor
Media
game engine.
Molecule pushes the fact that it is a game.
Right.
You know, it's
Yeah.
not just a game engine. It is a game for people who are not designers too, right? Because they kept talking about how their format is comparable to YouTube and how you can surf, you know, through dreams and play these different creations as much as you want.
Right. I think the YouTube analogy was great. That was like the
I thought
smartest
that
bit of
was
messaging that they had. Yeah, it's Mark
fantastic,
Healy,
yes.
the creative director. He said, look, you don't have to know how to make videos to enjoy YouTube. That's
I think
how
that's
we're
a
framing
great
dreams.
pitch. I
Yeah.
think that can definitely help with like the marketing.
Trying to explain. And
Yeah.
it is overwhelming seeing the tools. Like at the end of the second day, Elise and I dove in finally for some hands-on time. We're like, all right, let's go. Let's get these tools rolling. Because on the flight over, I spent a majority of that flight over to England just thinking about like, should I make a JRPG? Should I make this type of game? Oh God, it was overreaching so much because I eventually got the controller and it was like I was holding a controller for the first time again of like, I don't know how to do
It was really fun watching you guys.
Oh my God. Jumping in without a tutorial is nearly impossible.
It is a
Don't do
major
it.
struggle.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I had a better part of an hour with the game, and with at least like the team there with me to kind of guide me through, I finally felt more at ease with the controls.
Right.
But I mean, I was nowhere like able to make any kind of
Which is
feasible game.
concerning,
you know.
but seeing them use the game at the same time, like
That was a different
it
story.
is definitely a case of when you're at a studio, it is the best case scenario. And seeing these people that have built these tools, been using the tools for 5 years or so at this point, it is humbling. It is amazing. It made me emotional seeing how fast they're doing stuff. And like watching that, I left saying, this is the most powerful creative tool I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
Like most powerful piece of software I've ever seen in my life. It's absolutely mind-boggling.
And just to temper sort of like, oh, you're gonna get lost in this and be confused
Yes.
and woefully stuff. Like they'd have a very interesting tutorial system where like, you know, you can have the tutorial videos because it's very expansive, you know, tutorial system or
Yeah.
extensive, but you can have them playing in the corner.
Picture-in-picture
And-
style.
Yeah, picture-in-picture style. So it's very helpful while you're building stuff too and getting used to those systems that it's right there.
But even then, it's going to be
Yeah.
hours and hours of those. Like this is
Sure. but
imagine. I don't know.
I'm assuming the imp quests, like there are specific quests, you know, that you do to progress and to get those different statistics that you were talking about earlier.
Yes.
You know, and I'm sure that those two are tutorial like as
Yeah,
well.
the Persona system basically is gamifying this game engine because I agree with Ben that this is essentially a game engine, but the game version of that is sort of, you know, bragging rights to a degree, you know, where that meter goes up in the various categories while you're accomplishing Imp Quest.
So ImQuest, I one takeaway I had was leaving the studio thinking ImQuest is this game's secret weapon. Like after especially trying to play with the tools again without going through tutorials, so keep it in mind. But I was just so overwhelmed. But ImQuest and just having these in theory weekly challenges where it's going to say, hey, make a dancing hamburger, go, and then it'll rank you in the world, rank you amongst your friends, that type of thing. It's like, oh, that's a attainable goal, and I could see getting to
Yes.
that, especially just on the
Absolutely.
basis of sculpting or like, hey, make a metal song, go. You know, it's like that'll be so much fun to like compete with your friends with that stuff, and it's such a good gateway drug.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I think if they focus, like you said, on those specific sections like music or sculpting or whatever, then those could be really fun.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
You know?
Okay, so there's also a campaign in the game.
Yep.
Yep.
It's the campaign is very surreal. Like it concerns a down on his luck musician named Art. You know,
Megan
he
Malago
plays
making
the-
a game about art, believe it or not.
Yeah, and he plays what, the double bass? Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, it's the double bass, right?
Okay.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's
Was
yeah,
it?
I'm pretty sure it is. But anyway, so the story begins several years, I think, after he breaks up his band act with his friend / love interest Layla.
Yeah.
And so he's having nightmares. His career's kind of gone lousy because he needs collaborators while Layla's career is shining, but she misses collaborating with him. So the whole story plays out in Art's sort of mind / dreamscape where he's just going through all of these different stages trying to rekindle like sort of his collaborative spirit. And that takes on different like scenarios and even genres. So like the first one we saw starred, it was a platforming section and it starred Art's childhood toys.
Yeah.
A bear and a fox with an eye patch. And it plays sort of like Crash Bandicoot-y, Ratchet and Clanky in a pastel forest that looks beautiful.
Yeah.
You know? And then it switches gears after that section and we're in some sort of like celestial train station that looks like a very fancy thing that's the setting you might see in like Kentucky Route Zero
Okay.
or something, where it suddenly becomes like a point and click adventure to a degree where you're like interacting with people and trying to solve puzzles and stuff. And then later on, you know, we saw this when we were walking around. We got a over-the-shoulder gameplay demonstration. We didn't get like a demo per se, but there's a racing section. You know, so it's a story that's meant to, or it's a story mode that's meant to show how versatile.
It's them. They even described it as this, like, hey, it's just us showing off and showing what you can do in
that
dreams.
Is absolutely
but
what Mark said.
Also, huge thing to stress. I was shocked on the trip to learn that, like, oh, it's about 2 to 3 hours long,
Yes.
which is a little bit shorter than I was
It is
expecting.
short. It is short.
Well, they came back after that and said, well, we're still working on it, so that it might be longer than that. But yes, it is very much, because Little Big Planet was long.
Well,
I guess so.
Yeah, it's longer than that.
Yeah, oh, for sure, yeah.
But it is like it's supposed to be like 2 to 3 plus.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think what's different here is that Dreams isn't, its centerpiece isn't the campaign. You know,
Right.
that's not the draw. That's necessarily of what's going to bring people to Dreams. I mean, I think it's an interesting part of it, but the best part really is.
I mean, if you
is
look
the
at our cover
creation
story,
suite.
there's like
You know.
a sidebar and a couple of paragraphs about the story. You know, and I think that kind of says it all. Is like so much here is like on the creative suite.
Well,
Yeah.
from what I understood with the campaign is it's really, like you said, mostly an introduction
Yeah.
to those different genres and kind of showcasing like what is possible with
Yeah, and it did seem pretty cool, like especially the introduction. If you remember, like the introduction in Little Big Planet, also cool. We're like walking by all the faces and stuff, and even the opening to this game, it starts with the Big Bang of creation, and all was darkness, and the world was created, and art was born. All that fancy media
It's
molecule
memorable
stuff.
for
I
sure.
liked it.
It's super cool. You're like tearing down a wall and working right through this, taking over different objects.
Oh,
It is
yeah.
a very good introduction to the story mode, which then is incredibly varied.
I
And-
feel.
and-
Sorry, go ahead, Elise.
Sorry. It's worth noting too that whole campaign was created in Dreams.
Yep.
Yes,
Yeah.
no BS, as they said repeatedly. This is 100%.
Even when we
everything
asked
in here.
them, you're sure?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everything, even
Ev-
that cutscene,
and
even
then
how
you
the
just
camera's
sigh.
angled. And
Yep.
I'm just like, yes.
Stop asking us. Yes, dreams.
I mean,
can
that was
do
like
anything.
a recurring thing from
It's
all three of us. Was
Totally.
like, seriously, you made this in dreams,
Right.
Yeah.
Including our cover.
Yeah. Our cover.
Oh yeah, the Game
Game
Informer
Informer.
cover itself. Also, like we have a video going up on Friday showing off some levels from the campaign, and then they actually jump into the edit suite to show like how the level was put together a little bit, which is super cool. But yes, absolutely everything. Even though they talked about like how the entire game is Art's dreams, obviously. And they said that they were debating having like a moment at the end where Art wakes up and you see like the real life Art, like a live action thing. But then they said we didn't want to do it because the community wouldn't be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because you can't have the videos in there, so we don't want
That's
to cheat
smart.
at the very end of
Yeah.
the campaign, so we're not going to do it.
Yeah, I feel like, you know, and you guys obviously tell me if you disagree, but I feel like for me personally, like when we were walking around sort of the bullpen where they're designing everything, we went to the cover. You know, we saw John, who was the artist who created the cover,
Yeah.
working on it on his screen, and it looked 2D flat. So when we looked at it, I was like, oh, that looks neat. Very beautiful art.
It's like, oh, it's probably made in Photoshop.
Yeah, and then John showed that it was Dreams, and not only did he show that he made it in Dreams, he flipped it to show that it was 3D, and it's actually like, if you look at our cover, it's a level. It's a level that you're just seeing 2D, but it is actually a level in the game that if you turn it, you can see like in the distance the landscapes.
Yes.
Art on the car is actually models. It's not a drawing. It's like
right.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, yeah, it's a 3D space. Like he moved it to the side, and you could see all those different layers and all that.
It's insane.
space.
And like even
was cool.
Kareem, the art director, who's been there since the beginning of Media Molecules, fascinating guy. And he was talking about just how popular, obviously, working in Dreams is amongst the art team, believe it or not. But all the art team, more so than anybody else in the studio song, they were all using Move controllers. But Kareem even said that, like, oh, it's faster than Photoshop. Like, I expect concept artists to use Dreams, especially at that studio, but hopefully other studios moving forward, just for quickly expressing your ideas and getting it out there. Seeing those people work with those tools It's insane. And I would like to promote, because I feel like I was interested in Dreams beforehand, but I wasn't paying enough attention. But Media Molecule is doing a lot of live streams showing off like these people with those tools, and it's absolutely incredible. The Move controllers thing. It's an option. You can also use DualShock 4. I like the part that creative director Mark Healy said that he's only using the DualShock 4 because he wants to make sure that everything feels good using that. I used the DualShock when I was messing around with it. Elise, you swung big and went for 2 Move controllers.
I did. I used both of those, so I was sculpting away with both the Move controllers, which was quite difficult at first.
Yeah.
I was struggling even to just, change my perspective and move in that space.
Kareem made an obstacle
But-
course for you, literally, just so you could understand like how to move around this space with those things.
I got the privilege of like an in-person tutorial, with
Yes.
the development team, and they showed me through it. And then by the, I guess, half an hour point, I felt a lot more comfortable with being able to just navigate in that world. And I can say that sculpting with those 2 MOV controllers is really fun.
Oh,
like
it's-
just
yeah.
it feels like you've got like you're painting, you know? Just the movements feel really natural, and I really enjoy just going away with that. Once I got,
Right, the hang of it.
the
And it's-
hang of it.
And it's fun seeing the pros there use it as well, because you can do just weird stuff. Like if you bang the 2 Move controllers together, I believe it changes the shape
Yep.
of like the
Yes,
sculpture.
yes.
So there's like moving so
All
fast
these
and
little
banging the controllers. And
gestures.
yeah, obviously it's like undo and redo, I think is on the left and right D-pad. I forget if it's the same on the Move controller as well, but just these little shorthands that just, they fly through this stuff.
Yeah, we had a 45-minute interview with Kareem that was great.
the art director.
And I think that ties into what he said for artists was super frustrating, is like he did not like old art programs before Dream because you'd get hung up and you have to pause like halfway through doing a detail or something, because then you'd have to go like screw around with a slider or like go
Right.
click a button. So being able to change, your paintbrush or whatever, your modeling tool on the go with like just from muscle memory, like I need to do this really quickly, or like banging the thing together or whatever.
Yeah.
Like that was, hearing it in those terms as like someone who doesn't do art, like that was really like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I can see like how that would make things more seamless and easy to do.
Yeah, and he was
Yeah.
talking about in that interview as well, like at the start of the project, starting to build this, just the idea of, hey, how do we sculpt with like a fuzzy cube? It's something that computers very much don't want to do, to have this soft, smooth shape and kind of more hand-drawn, personalized vibe for art. But they eventually got there. But he said that early on, like there were some more technical artists in the studio that were like, we're not into this. Like we're fine. We don't need this level of tools in our next game. And then Kareem's like, yeah, but look at like your sketchbook. Like there's so much more personality in that than anything you can make in the computer. And that's what we want to tear down that barrier. And I think in theory, they've gotten to that point.
yes,
Yeah,
I think so.
I mean, we literally saw that they got to that point.
Yeah.
I feel like, we saw working demonstrations. They mentioned that the prototypes early on, the big problem was like technically the computer couldn't handle it. Like they would make one fuzzy cube and it would crash.
Right.
But like we saw it working. We saw it working in edit mode. We saw it working in play mode. To me, like they got it.
I also loved in that Kareem interview, there's a very fun moment where he's just, Kareem was talking about different games you can make, all this stuff, how he wants it to expand even beyond games, different functions and stuff. So, JV, at some point you said, so you want to see games about how to fix your washing machine? And
remember that,
Kareem
yeah.
just goes, oh, God, yeah. It's like, we're so into that. Like, just a level of creativity from that studio. Everyone was super into,
like
like,
a
get freaky with this stuff.
instruction manual that you play through.
Why not? If you can
Yeah.
move as fast as Media Molecule
the hell
can
not?
someday, totally.
I mean, I asked Siobhan at one point, like, how often do you guys do you do game jam? And she said that they don't do it so much now because they're trying to get the game out the door and polished
Right.
and stuff. But early on, like, it was just constant game jams to push the engine and see what could be made in there. And so he had a lot of surreal stuff. Like one of my favorite ones we saw, which was one of the designers in there was working on just a simple game that had 2 muscular, very animated, colorful guys on a stage. And it's a flexing contest of like, can you flex it better? And it's just simple, stupid stuff like that. That of course, I'm going to take 2 minutes to play that.
Totally.
And I think the YouTube system they have with Dream Surfing is the name
Yes.
of it. Is going to be super cool for finding that stuff to share with friends and play
It's
at
great
parties.
because I can just imagine like making a playlist and just snapping
At
through these.
parties.
Oh, especially because, so with Dream Surfing, you can just serve it up. So you're jumping from different dream to different dream. You need to spend 30 seconds within the game. But then something that's really cool is because you're spending 30 seconds in each each game, it's actually loading the next game underneath it. And so there's no loading. So you can just keep jumping game to game to game, different chapters of all these different games. You can set up, obviously, certain playlist ideas like I want horror games, I want this type of freaky game. Also, technically, this was like a technical deep dive, but I absolutely loved it. It was just a little aside I think Mark had, talking about technically how Dreams works and downloading levels and games and how all this stuff functions. And he pointed out something crazy, which is that like you're not storing the game up in the cloud for people to download. Like you're not storing the polygons and all the assets up there because that file size would be too huge. Technically, all that's being stored on Media Molecule and Sony's end is like the movements that you made, the edits that you made. So every time you download or play a Dreams level, it is just recreating your every movement
At lightning
as you
speed.
created
No kidding.
that game.
That's a huge deal too.
It
That's
makes for a much smaller
incredible.
size, is how they described it. But just that idea of
That's why it's so
technically-
seamless.
Yeah, it's just insane.
Wow.
So we've been gushing, I feel like, a fair amount. What are some concerns?
It is just the fact that I love Little Big Planet. Like the last paper I wrote in college was about Little Big Planet. I just love Little Big Planet. And then after this cover story trip, I went back and I was like, what did I make in Little Big Planet? And I went back and looked. I made one building. That was like a gas station, and that is where I threw in the towel.
But you played like a lot of community stuff, probably, right?
Yeah, and I enjoyed that. And so I worry about just hitting that wall again of like, oh, I'm gonna make a JRPG. It's gonna be great. Blah blah blah. Like I was doing on the cover story trip, and then seeing the tools and just saying, Jesus f***ing Christ, I cannot penetrate this. But I think ImpQuest is the access point. That is
Yes.
key.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
A personal question?
You bet.
What does Ben Hansen's JRPG look like? What does that look
Oh
like?
God.
Oh,
Is it just an Earthbound, like some version of
yeah,
Earthbound? or Open
Earthbound,
Hell?
but you kiss dinosaurs or something. Who the hell knows?
It would be some weird ass game.
I'd be for that.
Yeah.
I think my major concern is, and the one that they didn't do a great job of addressing, is the legality of certain things.
Okay, this is
That
huge.
is a big issue.
Like, what are you going to do? What is Sony and Media Molecule going to do when some kid in Aiken, South Carolina gets together with a bunch of his friends, talented friends, and they make some version of like Smash Brothers or something?
Well, as they said, they're like, it's the same moderation system on Sony's end that Little Big Planet had. And that definitely would happen a fair amount with Little Big Planet, but it wasn't unreasonable. They would take stuff down, and also it's like, hey, if you want to make that, go for it. Don't upload it. It's all yours, baby.
But like at the end of the day, though, my main concern is because I understand, the sort of precedent here is like, oh, there are a bunch of fan creations that get made in Unity, that get made in Unreal Engine, I don't know how many times we've posted a story about someone making Metal Gear Solid or trying to make Metal Gear Solid in Unreal 4 and Konami like killing
Right.
them. The big difference here, I feel like, is that this is a Sony-backed creation engine, and their competitors, something like Nintendo or Microsoft. Is that going to be enough for Nintendo when Sony's like responds with, "Oh yeah, we'll just take it down"?
I think it will be.
I
don't
think-
know. but-
I'm curious. I don't think it will be.
Okay.
It's like I want to see how that plays out.
It'll be interesting for
Yeah.
sure.
But like that's my concern is like copycat games and stuff. Like how are they going to handle that? And like so much of what they said to us felt like we're leaving a huge part of moderation to our community. So like gore, stuff you don't necessarily want to see. Our community members will be tasked with taking that down. And I always get kind of nervous when you put like responsibility with community members at, reporting stuff.
Did they say it was solely the community?
No, not solely, but
Okay.
a huge
but
part.
a part
Okay.
of it.
Yeah, so I get nervous about that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean it's hard to say, but I feel like they would have dealt with that too with Little Big Planet. So
Yeah, they have so much experience with
But
that
like
at this
it's
point.
it's a different world too. Like
Oh
I know
no, I mean you can create anything in Dreams. That's going to be way different than the limitations of Little Big Planet. But
Yeah. Also on the legal front, one of the most interesting aspects of this trip was just that slow realization. Because somebody wrote in to the podcast months ago about why doesn't Sony have their in-house engine? And it's like, well, Decima's kind of getting there, but then realizing on this trip, like, oh, this is kind of the backdoor game engine for Sony.
Right.
But then thinking about the future, about are they going to let people, and they would love to do it. They said they're very into the idea of publishing, nothing to announce yet, and a lot of things to work out. But are they eventually going to let people sell these games that they create on the PlayStation Store under like a Dreams banner or something? And then legally, who owns
That
it?
is
How does
so-
that rights issue work out? It's very complicated. And
that's
they said,
muddy waters.
They said, like,
Yeah.
that's lawyers, that's down the road. We haven't worked out the legal issues yet. All we know is we want to let people do whatever they want to do with these games, but we'll see.
They sound ambitious,
Yeah.
and they did
Yeah.
say that they are working with some developers already
What-
to bring some Dreams created, games to PSN.
Which was a huge tease. And so I think they
Yes.
just said it was one external game developer working on a PlayStation VR game.
PSVR.
Which is an aspect we haven't even talked about, but in theory, that's going to be there at launch, PlayStation VR support.
Yeah,
that is where
we did not get a chance to play VR
No.
when we
Yeah.
were there.
no, but that is where this thing could be absolutely bonkers. Like if you own a PSVR, why wouldn't you buy Dreams? In theory, it's an infinite-ish amount of like
It's
VR
like
content.
Tilt brush times 1,000.
Yeah.
It's going to be absurd. And like Mark Healy, again, the creative director, was just telling a story about like, oh, I was messing around with it, and real quick, I just made this helicopter game. He said he made it like, I don't know, an hour or so. Made this cheap little helicopter game, and then was piloting a helicopter around in VR. And just that ability to make something that quick and have that range of feeling and emotion with PSVR, it is going to be absurd for VR.
Yeah.
But I think they brought it up, or somebody mentioned at some point, like, is this just going to be a bunch of like surprise vomit simulators where it's like you're walking down the hallway and then the floor drops out underneath you, F you, screw you, you're in VR, have a good time. But they said they want to take that idea from Mario Maker where you have to complete the level in VR only if
Yourself.
you want to publish it.
Yeah.
Which is pretty smart.
That is
Yeah.
very smart. Thank God.
Yes.
Yeah, I think another concern I have is that so much of the gaming audience wants an immediacy. It feels like an immediate connection or an immediate like pleasurable feedback when a game comes out.
Yeah.
Now, and obviously there was a lot of talk during our cover trip and a lot of excitement for Dreams based around Little Big Planet, which came out in 2008. It's a different world since then. Like content creation, isn't a novelty. It's a thing that happens every day. It's a thing that's in our lives day in, day out, for better or for worse. Most AAA games seem to launch with a photo mode now or something that encourages creativity and abstract creation
Yeah.
in a way. So I'm curious, if the fan base will be there out of the gate and will hang on long enough for people, like a fair amount of people to learn the tools and to work together. Because I feel like we won't really see Dreams' potential until months out of the gate.
That's true, but something very important there is there's going to be a beta, which they say is happening this year. We don't know when
Yes.
exactly. We would also love to know. Also, we would love to know the Dreams release date, everybody. Trust us, we're with you.
Yep.
They're not saying. But with the beta, things aren't being wiped. So in theory, right when that game comes out, there's going to be all this content created in the beta, which could be really incredible and might give
Yeah.
it that jump start for the community.
Plus, when people start getting the hang of it, I mean, we were seeing, levels created in 2 hours.
Yep.
People are going to be able to make games in a day or in hours if they want.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's going to take months to see, the promise or potential of Dreams.
No, I mean the truest, this is when you see crazy mods for Skyrim, that it's just this is a brand new fucking game that's 30 hours long.
You just mean those really impressive, expansive.
like the true this is what you can do with Dreams when it's pushed to its max.
Okay. Okay,
I
see.
think that will honestly take months. I don't think that's something a group of people, who have never played with these tools before can do in weeks.
Oh, no, absolutely not.
Yeah.
It's going to be a very common thing on GameInformer.com and other gaming sites, especially just Reddit in general. Look what these guys made in Dreams. Look at this game. It's going to be coming up again and again. And a lot of it's going to be, hey, we remade God of War in Dreams and all that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But the potential, if the creative community in general grabs onto this tool set and gets their mind around it as well as Media Molecule has, good God. It could be,
it would be so
massive.
cool.
Yeah. I just want to talk a minute too about how the educational value of Dreams 2
Yeah.
is a game designer sort of kit.
Right.
In a way, I feel like the best way to describe Dreams is as visual programming. So, for example, one of the devices and we saw in the toolkit is called a trigger. Mm-hmm. All right. And it's a field. If you imagine a force field, a green force field, you can place on the map anywhere in the level. So when someone, a player, an NPC, you can, select whoever triggers it, steps into that field, it triggers whatever else that is connected to the force field. It
Right.
might be a camera, it might be a door that opens, it might be, the player just stepped in here.
Could be
and
an
their
explosion.
their
Could
their
be-
health goes to 0.
Right.
Yeah.
So in programming, that's usually called an if-then conditional, which functions like in English. But in programming terms where it's okay, if the player does this, then down the line it has this consequence. So to present that visually, it basically makes it's not cheating. It's not going around programming. You're still programming. You're just doing it in a visual way.
Everything's visual. Like
Yeah.
even like the music in the level, it'll have a little notch that's floating out there.
It's
Everything's
all
visual.
sliders.
Which is
Yeah.
a fantastic way to, a very clever way of approaching.
That's why
Right.
when you open the tool set, it's kind of awe-inspiring immediately because there's so many tools, but there has to be that many tools so you can have that many options.
Oh, especially like you think you can wrap your mind around, all right, sculpting, music, got it. Even that's mind-boggling. And then it's like, all right, here's the logic tool set. And that's where you just want to break down and
Yeah.
try and pick your
Yeah.
brain off the floor.
Yeah, the logic tool set is where you go, oh, this is actually viable as a game design tool.
Yes.
It was interesting listening to them talk about, you know, the possibilities of this in the education system and how they talked about Little Big Planet and how universities were using that or high schools were using it
Yeah.
to, I don't know, simulate a historical moment or something
Yeah, like
that.
Henry VIII was the example Shimon
Henry
gave
VIII,
us.
yeah. And you know, I think Dreams takes that a step further, like you're saying, where you're not you can't you're not only just like simulating these worlds or whatever, you're simulating game design.
Yeah.
You know?
You are learning how to program.
That-
it's just not in a
That
new
could
way.
be a fantastic tool
especially if they
for
put it
game
on.
design schools.
Yeah. Still, my biggest thing is I
But-
want it on PC because it's awesome. The tool set is amazing, but the idea of like investing all this time into just working on something within the PS4, it's like if Sony would ever allow them to release this on PC, game over. Like that is a bank
I don't know
game
if I see
engine.
that
I
happening.
mean, I think, man,
Yeah.
I see a future where that happens. I think it
think it's
depends on
possible.
like how game designers and react to it. You know, because that happened with Unreal Engine 4. People didn't think that would ever go free. Or
Right.
like be open and accessible. And it's one of the most accessible engines out there in terms of like how you can get it, how you can acquire it.
Totally.
Yeah. So
It's a waste. This team has been creating this insane tool set over there in England for so many years now. And the idea of like, if Sony could ever release that as another game engine on PC, get a cut of the profits in like a very Unreal or Epic kind of way, I can't imagine that they wouldn't go for the financial incentive down the road at some point.
yeah.
So I don't think it's impossible. And good God, that's what I want to see.
Yeah,
Well,
no.
yeah.
I mean, I just see so many like budding designers. Obviously the payment and ownership thing is kind of bothersome right now to not have a clear answer, but just for them to be able to go to an interview and say, hey, here's my portfolio. Here's a thing I made in Dreams. I gathered this many people to make it. I worked with them day in, day out for
Totally.
this amount of time. Play this. That
Yes.
is huge.
That would be great.
This is one of the most exciting and strangest cover stories I think we've ever done. It actually, during the demos, I was like, what is this? This reminded me of. Then I remembered back in 2012 on the Gears of War Judgment cover story trip, we were in Epic, and it was before they had launched Unreal Engine 4. And we did this series of videos where it's like Cliffy B walking us through the Kismet tools in Unreal Engine 4, but look how easy this is. And that was basically the entire cover story this time, is walking through tools like Unreal Engine 4.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sorry for listeners and viewers if you're not interested in it, but this could be so huge. And worst case scenario, that fraction of a percent of people that do make stuff for this game could be just mind-boggling.
If you're not interested in the tool set itself, I think you will be interested what comes out of it. Like
Yeah,
you
of
will
course.
play games. I think you will play games in like a year or so, maybe, that you really probably like a lot because of this tool set.
Yes.
Yeah. So
I am definitely most interested to see what I can find in Dreams and like see what other people make.
Totally.
Yep.
It is
know?
my most anticipated game of 2019 right now, just for the potential of it. And I'm so curious. It has to be my number one most anticipated at this point.
Totally.
Hey, GameInformer.com/streams. Month of
Yeah.
content. What's coming up? What are you guys looking forward to?
we've got, Elise is doing the bulk of the coverage, but I think the one I'm looking forward to most is your article on the real world applications of dreams outside of video games, just
Yeah.
because I'm super interested in that sector as someone who's taught and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they did talk quite at length about how they want architects or fashion designers and, outside of the gaming industry to, kind of latch on to this
I meant
Yeah.
as a
bulk-
tool set.
I meant bulk of written features. Sorry.
Yeah, there's a fair amount of video too. It's no big deal.
Yeah, sorry.
Video. Who gives a
That's fine.
Yeah.
We did a rapid fire, which we broke the record. We have 229 questions with the co-founder of Media Molecule. It went up on Wednesday, so you can check that out on GameInformer.com or a YouTube channel there. We also have, new gameplay today going up Friday, showing off the campaign. We're going to walk through the Game Informer themed game that Media Molecule essentially made for us in 3 hours.
I
we
love
should
that
have
thing.
burned that.
It is weird.
It's worse
We
than any
made
snuff film.
we made our own sound effects, and they're terrifying.
Everything's terrifying. But yeah, a lot of fun stuff coming up throughout the month. And then hopefully we'll have a podcast at the end of this month where we'll get some folks from Media Molecule on and answer your questions, because Dreams, unlimited potential. So I hope you have questions. GameInformer.com/streams, everybody.
Yay!
That was just a clip from a larger show called The Game Informer Show. You can find it on iTunes, Google Play, or GameInformer.com. We take the fun opportunities and exclusive information from Game Informer magazine and boil it into a show that airs every Thursday with exclusive cover story information, developer interviews, a lot of fun stuff. So come love games with us.